You again. Still awake. Of course. Let me guess. It's 2 a.m. You're doom-scrolling history videos, and now you want to know what it was like being a male concubine in ancient Rome, because apparently sleep is for the weak. Well, fine. Let's play along. But I'll warn you, you wouldn't have survived 5 minutes as a Roman concubiness. No offense. You're soft. You have too many feelings. You think being left on red is emotional damage. But hey, let's imagine you were born lucky. And by lucky, I mean pretty, powerless, and very, very available. Because that's what you are now, a concubiness. The Roman Empire's idea of companionship with a pulse. You're not a boyfriend. You're not a husband. You're a glorified houseplant with benefits. A warm body owned by someone much richer and far more terrifying than you. Think of yourself as decorative furniture with very specific nightly responsibilities. Now, before we dive headfirst into your historical nightmare, I suggest you get cozy. Blankets, pillows, maybe some tea. Whatever century you're watching from, leave a comment. Go on, tell me what time period you're trying to escape. I promise, this one won't help. And yes, go ahead and hit subscribe. Or don't. What do I care? I'm a disillusioned scholar, narrating the collapse of empires to people who can't sleep without emotional damage. Alright, concubine, lie down, breathe slowly, and prepare yourself for the worst career change in ancient history. Congratulations, it's the year 1117 CE. Rome is at the height of its power. The empire stretches from northern Britain to the sands of Egypt. Aqueducts flow, gladiators bleed, and the Colosseum smells exactly like you'd expect a giant stone meat blender to smell. And you just got picked. No, not for citizenship. Don't be ridiculous. You've been chosen as someone's concubiness, their male concubine. A lovely little title that translates roughly to, you belong to them now, permanently, intimately, and with absolutely no say in the matter. Your property. You probably think you're special. You're not. You caught the eye of someone wealthier than your entire bloodline. Maybe a nobleman, maybe a retired general, maybe, if you're really unlucky, an ambitious senator with too much wine and too few boundaries. Either way, you're now part of their collection, just another possession in a household full of mosaic floors, imported spice racks, and decorative slaves. You won't be sleeping in the master's chamber, of course. No, that's for his wife, the one he married for political alliance, land, and tax breaks. You're for the evenings, for when the guests leave and the torches burn lower. You're not a partner, you're a pastime. You see, Romans had a very convenient way of thinking about relationships. Love, optional. Respect, rare. Power, non-negotiable. So your new job, if you can call it that, is to be a constant, quiet companion. Someone to smile at the right time, stay out of the way during banquets, and never ever forget who owns you. They might even introduce you at parties. Ah yes, this is my concubiness. Isn't he charming? Looks good in red. Will they marry you? Of course not. Roman law and Roman dignity wouldn't allow it. You're the fun, the side story, the footnote in the grand tale of Roman domestic politics. And don't get ahead of yourself. There are no vows, no wedding rings, no shared bank accounts. What you do get are vague promises, maybe some jewelry, a few nice tunics, and if you're really lucky, a nickname. Something degrading but affectionate, like my little Greek pearl or that clever Thracian boy. But rights? No rights, no vote, no voice, no legal standing. And when it all ends, because it will end, your name won't be on the tombstone. If they bury you at all, it'll be on the edge of some goat field next to broken amphorae and other discarded things. You're not family, you're decor, and not even the tasteful kind. Of course, the Romans would never say this out loud. They had poetry for you, odes about your smile, songs about your softness. You were immortalized in verse, compared to lilies and moonlight, and then tossed aside when you started looking too grown. Still awake? Good. Now, because I know you're wondering, Was it all bad? Let me be clear, that's the wrong question. A more useful one is, was it yours? And the answer is no. Your body wasn't yours. Your days weren't yours. Your future? Definitely not yours. You didn't get to choose your patron. You didn't get to negotiate your role. You didn't even get to decline. You got chosen, like a ripe fruit at the market. And no one asked the peach how it felt about dinner. And don't think for a second that wealth made it better. Whether your owner was a lonely widower or a powerful aristocrat, the dynamic was the same. They had choices. You were the choice. You existed to fill their time, flatter their ego, and quietly vanish when they wanted someone new. Let's talk appearances. You were expected to be perfect, well-groomed, smooth-skinned, soft-spoken, hairless, ideally, strong enough to be eye-catching, but never so muscular that it looked threatening. You had to walk the line between pleasing and passive, attractive, but never assertive. Speak too boldly, you're impertinent. Stay too quiet, you're boring. Laugh at the wrong moment, suddenly you're disrespectful. It's exhausting, really, which is probably why you're so tired right now. Or maybe that's just me, hoping you'll finally fall asleep. But don't drift off just yet. There's still the matter of public perception. Because while your patron might adore you in private, don't expect society to be as charitable. To them, you're not admirable. You're not respectable. You're a curiosity, a scandal, an object of whispered gossip and badly drawn graffiti in public baths. And if by some miracle your patron dies and leaves you something in their will, expect their family to show up with a lawyer and a knife. Probably both. So, still here. Fine. Let's talk about status. In ancient Rome, status was everything. Your name, your lineage, the way you walked, who you walked with, who you were allowed to look at while walking. The Romans didn't just breathe status, they practically snorted it. And you don't have any. You are the lowest acceptable tier of desirable. Just enough charm to be paraded around. Just little enough power to never be a threat. That's why you were chosen. You're not a noble. You're not a citizen. You're not even respected. You're convenient. Maybe you're a slave, born into bondage, sold by your family, or picked up after a war. Maybe you're a freedman, which means you were a slave, but someone somewhere got sentimental and let you go. How sweet. Or maybe you're a foreigner, a beautiful wide-eyed Greek boy with just enough education to quote poetry and not enough Latin to complain about anything important. Either way, you've been groomed, cleaned up, and handed off like a particularly expensive fruit basket. But make no mistake, you are not equal. You are there for one reason only, to reflect your patron's power back at them, like a polished bronze mirror. You make them look strong, cultured, virile. You're a living prop in a never-ending performance of Roman masculinity. And God's forbid you forget your place. If you speak too confidently, you're arrogant. Laugh too loud, you're vulgar. If you even dare to stand too close to another man, especially one your patron doesn't approve of, well, congratulations, you're now unfaithful. And by Roman standards, that's grounds for removal, the permanent kind. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. You're seated, not standing at dinners, not beside them, of course, below them. You might get to pour wine, maybe play a lyre, whisper a poem into their ear if they're feeling romantic. But don't interrupt. You're not entertainment, you're atmosphere, a moving sculpture with better posture. And yes, sometimes you're taken to public events, carefully of course, only when your patron's feeling bold. They might dress you up in fine silks, maybe hang a gold chain around your neck, just enough to make people stare, but not enough to make them respect you. Because here's the cruel joke. The more beautiful you are, the more disposable you become. Rome adores youth. It worships beauty, but it doesn't value it. It devours it. You are admired, whispered about, envied quietly, and erased even more quietly. And the irony, your very existence improves the image of the person who owns you. They seem more refined, more dominant. Look, they say with their eyes, I own this exquisite creature, and you don't. You are an accessory, like a ring or a well-trained dog. But even rings get inherited. Dogs get buried with honors. You get forgotten. Still awake? Persistent, aren't you? Let's make it even clearer. Your voice doesn't matter unless it's saying something flattering. Your opinions, adorable, they'll be ignored. You don't have thoughts, you have expressions. Blush when you're meant to. Gasp softly at their cleverness. Laugh, but not louder than them, ever. Because here's the thing, the entire Roman system was obsessed with control. Control over land, over people, over appearance. So your role as soft, silent, pleasing decoration wasn't just tradition, it was reassurance. You were the proof that everything in the world was still in its proper place. They were Roman. You were owned. And if for 1 second you forgot that, if you acted too bold, too proud, too equal, then you'd find yourself replaced, quietly, painlessly, efficiently. No scandal, no outrage, just silence. The same silence you're probably sinking into right now. Good, let it pull you down. You're a pillow, remember. So, lie still, be soft, and disappear quietly, like all the others. Ah, yes, you're still here. Not asleep yet, are you? Fine, let's rewind your Roman tragedy to the beginning, or close enough. You didn't become a concubine as an adult. No one started this arrangement with a firm handshake and a contract. No, you were chosen young, uncomfortably young. We're talking early teens, the Roman legal age for, let's call it domestic companionship, was 12. 12, barely tall enough to reach a high table, but just old enough in the empire's eyes to be of interest. Did anyone ask how you felt about it? Of course not. You were noticed, picked, groomed, in the Roman sense of the word, dressed nicely, cleaned up, taught to speak politely, and instructed to stay very, very quiet unless spoken to. That's your role, a companion with decorative value. Your job wasn't to be witty or charming or self-assured. It was to smile at the right time, to listen, to flatter, to make your patron, a far older, far more powerful Roman citizen, feel important, masculine, and in complete control. And as long as you were small, smooth-voiced, and silent, you served your purpose. But here's the catch. Rome loved youth, not longevity. Once your voice started to change, once your face lost that soft glow of boyishness, once your opinions started to sound like real thoughts, well, that's when the curtain started to fall. Your usefulness had an expiration date, and it was written in your biology. Puberty wasn't a milestone, it was a red flag. You got taller, stronger, more confident, and just like that, you became less charming and more inconvenient. You might have noticed your patron pulling away, fewer visits, less eye contact, compliments replaced by silence. Maybe they even started showing interest in someone newer, someone who looked a lot like you used to. And if you dared to speak up, question anything, express an emotion that wasn't grateful obedience, that was it. Exit, stage left. You could be quietly dismissed, sent off to serve elsewhere, or simply ignored until you faded into the background like worn furniture. Romans didn't like messy endings. They preferred clean replacements. Still with me? Let's make this real for a moment. You were probably brought into this life at 13, maybe younger. By 14, you had learned how to read body language better than scrolls. You knew how to look pleased on command. You knew how to avoid eye contact with jealous rivals, and how to keep smiling even when everything in you wanted to run. You'd been taught that silence was survival, that being agreeable was safer than being honest. And then, just as you started to understand the game, the rules changed. You weren't adorable anymore. You were ambitious, or worse, presumptuous. Your growing independence made people nervous, and in a city obsessed with control, nervous people don't keep companions around for long. No one ever told you this, but the moment you became a real person with a real personality, your time was up. That's how Rome worked. Its affection was conditional, its power was absolute, and its favorites always temporary. You learned that by watching others fade away, or maybe by looking in the mirror and realizing you were no longer the person they wanted, just the one they remembered. And here's the part that hurts most. You started to believe them. You started to think it really was your fault, that if only you'd stayed quieter, softer, less you, maybe they'd have kept you longer. But the truth, there was never a version of you that could stay, not in a role that was built on youth and obedience. Now you're 15, maybe 16, still young, but somehow already too old for the job no one asked if you wanted. And as you watch your patron entertain someone new, you finally understand. You were never special, you were just next. Now lie back, breathe slowly, and remember this. In ancient Rome, growing up wasn't freedom, it was disqualification. Oh no, you've done it now. You had one job. Stay beautiful, stay quiet, and stay forgettable. And instead, you caught his eye. Not just anyone's eye. The emperor's, specifically Nero's. Yes, that Nero. The same man whose name still echoes through time like a bad punchline no one laughs at. The fire, the fiddling, the egomania, that Nero. And now he thinks you're cute. Not cute in the adorable street performer kind of way. Not even in the harmless lapdog sort of way. No, you've become a fascination, a curiosity, a new toy for a man who already had everything and still wanted more. You'd think that might be flattering. It's not. It's a trap. Let me set the scene. You're young, soft-spoken, decorative, just the kind of ornament an insecure emperor might want to show off in front of a court that whispers behind his back. So he takes you, not with permission, not with fanfare, just takes. One day you're in the background, the next you're wearing pearls and being told to smile at banquets you never asked to attend. Because Nero doesn't date, he possesses. And to really seal the deal, he makes a grand gesture. He marries you, publicly. Yes, you heard that right. The Emperor of Rome marries you, another man, in a full imperial ceremony. Trumpets, witnesses, vows, the whole thing. Except you're not the groom, you're the bride, veil and all. Pause. Go on. Let that sink in. You're standing in front of hundreds of people, dressed in silks and cosmetics, head bowed, as Nero smiles like he just conquered another province. He places the ring on your finger. They call you Lady, Empress, Mistress of the Wardrobe, and all the while you're pretending not to hear the snickering behind the curtains, pretending you don't notice the way senators avert their eyes. Or worse, don't. You think this is the worst of it. No, Nero is thorough. Before the wedding, he has you surgically altered, castrated. Yes, that's the version Rome tells. He arranges for the one thing that'll make the illusion complete in his mind. So now you're not just a companion, you're his wife, his creation, a living, breathing monument to his power, his madness, and his bottomless hunger for control. Try not to cry when they dress you in pearls. The mascara will run. And if you thought this charade was a secret, think again. You're paraded through the streets, dragged from Rome to Greece and back again, in full ceremonial display. You attend feasts. You sit beside him at games. He calls you by your new name, Empress, always in public, always loud. To the Roman elite, you're an embarrassment. To the people, a punchline. But to Nero, you're proof that he can rewrite the rules, that even the gods must watch in silence as he does whatever he pleases. And you smile, you wave, you keep your head tilted at just the right angle, hoping no one sees the panic behind your eyes. Because what happens if you displease him? What happens when you age, or speak out of turn, or simply bore him? Let's be honest, you've seen it before. Nero didn't hesitate to have his own mother killed. He accidentally kicked one of his wives to death during pregnancy. And there's no shortage of courtiers who vanished after one misplaced word. So you learn to adapt. You speak in whispers. You laugh at the right moments. You nod during those long meandering speeches about his poetry, the ones no one dares criticize, and every night you go to sleep wondering which is worse, being invisible or being seen. Still with me? Good, because this is the Roman Empire, and you're no longer just a concubiness. You're imperial propaganda, a one-person theater performance meant to shock, entertain, and remind the world that Nero answers to no one, not the Senate, not the gods, certainly not you. And here's the tragedy. Rome remembers you, but not for who you were, not your real name, not your thoughts, fears, or dreams, just the story, the scandal, the symbol of an empire teetering on absurdity. That's your legacy now. You didn't choose this, but Rome chose you. And once the emperor was done, you were discarded, like a costume from one of his plays, swept off stage, replaced by the next distraction. And the audience clapped anyway. So get comfortable, sink into that pillow. Let the silence wash over you, like the Tiber at midnight, because if there's one thing worse than catching Nero's eye, it's what happens after he blinks. Oh, how sweet. You think you're in love. That little flutter in your chest every time your patron walks into the room, that ache when they look at someone else. You've mistaken all of that for romance. Poor thing. That's not love. That's dependency. And in Rome, that's the same thing as a job you can't quit. Let me say it plainly. You don't have a relationship. You have a role. You're not a partner. You're an accessory with teeth, and you're only allowed to show them when you smile. So you're in love. Adorable. Just be careful, because love makes you believe you're safe. You're not. Let's talk logistics. You can't own property. You can't negotiate your status. You can't decide to walk away if things go sour. You don't even get to choose what you're called. People will name you based on how useful, pretty, or compliant you are that week. You're not a person, you're a service, still feeling warm and fuzzy. Your survival depends entirely on the whims of someone more powerful than you. If they're in a good mood, you might be invited to dinner. If they're bored, you won't eat at all. You might be ignored, or gifted to someone else as a social favor. You exist at the mercy of their attention span. Sound familiar? Yeah, like an influencer boyfriend, just without the Instagram and with more olive oil on the floors. Let's talk about daily life. You might imagine concubinage is all lounging around, being fed grapes and attending parties in fancy tunics, maybe in a scroll-written romance novel, sure. In reality, you have chores, and not just the physical kind, though those are bad enough. You help dress them, run errands, memorize schedules, fetch things, get things, carry things, smile through it all. And if a guest makes a snide comment about your presence, you better laugh like it's funny. But those are just surface-level tasks. Your real job? Being available. Emotionally, physically, socially. You're expected to anticipate moods, to flatter them when they're low, to disappear when they're angry, to never interrupt, never correct, and absolutely never forget your place. You don't talk first. You don't ask for space. You don't get days off, because you don't have a life. You're an accessory to someone else's. And love, oh, love just makes this worse, because it convinces you that maybe, just maybe, you're special, that you're different, that they feel something real. And sometimes they do, for a week, maybe a month, if you're particularly clever. But power in Rome is a fickle thing, and affection is currency that depreciates fast. One bad day, one new face, one ambitious rival, and suddenly you're old news. And do you think they'll break up with you gently? No, they'll vanish, or worse, they'll punish you for being inconvenient, for caring too much, for showing emotion they never gave you permission to have. Let's say, hypothetically, you become upset. Maybe you confront them. Maybe you cry. Maybe you ask them, what are we? That's cute. You know what you are? A liability. And in a society obsessed with appearances, the last thing they want is a liability with feelings. So now you're difficult, and difficult people don't last long in Roman households, especially when their usefulness is tied to their ability to stay quiet and attractive. You know what happens next. They call it a reassignment. You might end up in someone else's villa, maybe in the countryside, maybe passed around from host to host like an oddly beautiful serving dish. Or maybe, if they're feeling merciful, they give you a tiny stipend and suggest you start a quiet life somewhere. That is, if you're lucky. If you're unlucky, well, no one remembers where you went. Because again, you don't have rights. You have functions. And if you ever stop functioning, you disappear. So no, love is not your salvation. It's a risk. A dangerous, blinding thing that makes you forget the one unbreakable rule of your new Roman life. You are replaceable. Now breathe, slowly. Sink into the mattress, the floor, the faded memory foam, whatever's under you. You've made it this far in the story, which means either you're invested or you're just stubborn about falling asleep. Either way, you're still property. Just slightly more attached to your owner than is wise. So, you've survived this long as a Roman male concubine, which is impressive considering how little Rome thinks of you. You've endured the boredom, the obedience, the whole try not to develop a personality clause of your invisible contract. But now we get to the fun part. Public opinion. Here's how Romans see you, concubine. You're not respected, you're not feared, you're not even envied. You're entertainment, and not the fun kind. They whisper about you in bathhouses. They snicker when you pass in silk. They look straight through you when you're standing behind someone important. Unless, of course, they're planning to ask if you're available later. You're a guilty pleasure no one admits to. The human version of an expensive wine they claim to hate in public, but drink with both hands when no one's watching. Your name might never be spoken aloud, but your reputation enters every room 5 seconds before you do. You're laughed at, not with. Romans love to mock what they secretly desire. It's a tradition. And oh, do you give them material? They laugh at your voice. Too soft, too sweet, too practiced. They laugh at your clothing. Too elegant for someone without a name. They laugh at the way you walk, talk, serve, stand, even when you're silent. Especially when you're silent. They invent entire stories about your private life, then pass them off as fact at dinner parties. They'll describe you in 10 different ways, none of them flattering, slippery, feminine, exotic, unnatural, and yet they want you. They want you in secret corners of villas, in candlelit libraries, in locked rooms after senators have delivered very serious speeches about honor and masculinity. In daylight, you're a disgrace. In moonlight, you're irresistible. You think that's power. It's not. It's volatility. It's being the thing they desire most and respect least. A walking contradiction that they can use, mock, adore, then forget, all in the same breath. Now let's talk about courtrooms. Not metaphorical ones, actual Roman courtrooms. Because despite your lack of rights, your name might still come up in legal proceedings, but never in a good way. Your existence is used as evidence of someone else's lack of judgment, of poor taste, of corruption. If a senator is accused of misconduct, oh, don't worry, you will be dragged into it. They'll describe your influence, your corrupting presence. They'll mention how much time he spent with you. Not to ask what he did, but to prove that whatever he did must have been your fault. Because when they need a scapegoat, Rome picks the pretty powerless one every time. There are court records where people like you are mentioned only by nickname, as jokes, as warnings, as shadows behind powerful men who made real decisions. But the moment something goes wrong, you're no longer a secret, you're a symptom, and they always blame the symptom, never the disease. Meanwhile, the same people who testified against you,
Yeah.
they still come to visit.
Not officially, of course.
Their names won't appear on scrolls. They send messengers, use back alleys, arrange appointments that everyone pretends don't exist. You learn to smile through it, to never mention what you know, to never remind them of what they said about you earlier that day. Because the second you speak up, you're dangerous. And dangerous things in Rome, They get silenced, permanently. Now pause, breathe. You're not just someone they laugh at, you're someone they need to laugh at. Because if they took you seriously, they'd have to admit you hold power they can't explain, desire they can't control, that you're everything they secretly want but publicly condemn. And that would make them uncomfortable. So instead they keep laughing, and you keep pretending it doesn't bother you. That's the deal. That's your life. You are the punchline that never gets old, until you do. Now close your eyes, stretch your legs, sink into the quiet like it's a warm Roman bath, minus the sarcasm and side-eye. Because in ancient Rome you could be mocked and desired, sometimes in the same sentence. And sleep is the only place you're safe from either. So, you've done your job. You've smiled when told. You've laughed at bad poetry. You've tolerated the backhanded compliments and whispered insults. But now we arrive at the part that Rome really cares about. Not your personality, not your loyalty, your body, or rather, the statement your body makes. Because in ancient Rome, your body isn't yours, it's theirs. It's political, symbolic, a vessel for a message you never agreed to send. Let's talk masculinity, Roman masculinity. It's not about identity, or character, or emotional resilience. No, it's about one thing, position. In a Roman relationship, especially one between men, one gives and one receives. Guess which one you are? Exactly. You don't get to be dominant. You get to be a reminder of who isn't. They don't see you as a man, not in the Roman sense, because Roman manhood isn't just about being male, it's about being powerful, assertive, physically and socially impenetrable. You, on the other hand, you're penetrable, therefore feminine, therefore less. You're not an individual, you're a metaphor for weakness, a walking symbol that someone else has power over you, and worse, that they've used it. Romans loved metaphors. They wrote them into poetry, painted them on vases, carved them into marble. You're one too. A living metaphor for dominance lost, or won, depending on who's doing the telling. Now don't get confused. It wasn't about love. It wasn't even really about pleasure. It was about status. Always about status. When someone claims your body, what they're really doing is using you to say, look how Roman I am, look how in control, and you just lie there and nod. Not literally, gods forbid you emote without permission, but figuratively, your whole existence is just one long agreement that yes, you are beneath them, yes, they are stronger, yes, they are more Roman than you'll ever be. Your silence, loud, your position, political, your body, a performance piece, and not a very respected one. You might be celebrated in private, doted on in small candle-lit rooms where no one else can see. But the second sunlight hits your face, you become a liability, a contradiction, because Romans didn't know what to do with people who blurred the lines. They either glorified you or destroyed you, sometimes both, in the same week. And if you're thinking, maybe it wasn't all that bad, let me remind you, there were no protections, no rights, no shield from the consequences of someone else's shame. If your patron decided to deny the relationship, pretend it never happened. Guess who got punished? Not them. Not the powerful man protecting his career. You. You were the seducer, the manipulator, the ambitious little ornament who should have known better than to tempt an honest Roman citizen. Because Roman masculinity, the kind that fills statues and Senate speeches, didn't tolerate contradiction. And you were a walking contradiction. You were soft in a world that punished softness, quiet in a culture that demanded raw, passive in a city that admired conquest. So what do? You disappear, not dramatically, not tragically, just quietly, like a joke that stopped being funny, like a metaphor that lost its edge. You go out of fashion. Someone younger, prettier, more useful takes your place, and history barely remembers your name, which, lucky for you, means you can finally rest. So get comfortable. Let your thoughts drift like incense smoke in a Roman temple. And remember, here in the Empire, your body was never really yours. It was a sentence, not a sanctuary, a stage with no applause. Oh, so you've made it to the palace. Congratulations. All those years of being quiet, agreeable, heartbreakingly decorative, and finally, you're living in the imperial court, draped in silks, drinking imported wine, eating things that haven't been salted beyond recognition. You're inside the belly of the beast now. How proud you must be. But I'll save you the suspense. You're not safe. You're just in a fancier kind of danger. Because palace life, it's not a reward. It's a test, a never-ending audition for a role you already landed and can still be recast in at any time. You thought being a concubiness in a merchant's home was exhausting. Try surviving in a palace where everyone smiles too much, speaks in half-truths, and measures your worth by how nervous you make the person next to them. The palace is a masquerade, except the masks are made of gold leaf and betrayal, and yours never comes off. Every hallway has ears. Every servant knows things they shouldn't. Every lover has a motive, and every cup of wine could be your last, if you're lucky enough to have it poisoned instead of being accidentally tripped down some stairs. Hope you're good at keeping secrets, because here, even a glance too long, too fond, too misplaced can get you quietly erased. Let's talk about your competition. Oh yes, there's competition. You're not the only one in pearls anymore. Every other room has some newer, younger, softer-eyed version of you rehearsing how to giggle at the Emperor's boring jokes. You get one wrinkle, one blemish, one off day, and suddenly they forget you were ever the favorite. You're not a person, you're an era, and eras end. Remember, emperors are human. Well, in theory, they get bored, they want novelty. And in Rome, novelty doesn't mean flowers and dinner. It means you watching someone else wear your jewelry and sit at your place at the feast. Still feeling safe? You smile. That's your weapon. That smile that says I'm fine while your stomach churns and your hands are clenched under the table. That smile that says I don't mind when the emperor flirts with the flute player you know was trying to copy your laugh last week. And yes, even the flute player's gunning for your spot. You're not sleeping here, you're surviving. You learn to speak carefully, to walk soundlessly, to observe everything and reveal nothing. You become fluent in the language of compliments that are actually warnings. You perfect the art of saying thank you when someone is clearly threatening you. The imperial court is not built for comfort. It's built for power. Every marble column, every mosaic, every perfectly staged banquet is designed to remind you that you're replaceable, that the throne is permanent, and you're a temporary accessory leaning against it. You sleep with one eye open, if you sleep at all, because you know one day you'll open the wrong curtain, hear the wrong thing, or worse, be in the wrong room when someone else decides you're inconvenient. You don't leave the palace, you get dismissed from it, or buried underneath it. And the worst part, if you're dismissed, they'll replace you before you're even out the gates. Some sweet-faced provincial boy with olive skin and obedient eyelashes will take your place, wear your robes, smile your smile, and mean it, because he hasn't learned yet. He thinks he's safe, just like you did. Now close your eyes, concubines. Let the tension melt from your shoulders. You've spent another 10 minutes tiptoeing through the world's most dangerous love triangle, and frankly, even I'm tired. The palace is not a dream, it's a performance, and you're just scene dressing with very good cheekbones. Oh, wonderful. You've been promoted. You're no longer draped over a senator's couch or wilting under the imperial gaze. Nope, now you're in the company of a Roman soldier, a legionnaire no less. Bronze muscles, boiled leather armor, and absolutely zero patience for your feelings. He says you're his favorite. Translation: you're his stress relief. The empire is always at war with someone. The Parthians, the Germans, the weather, and your legionnaire? He's a loyal, brutal little cog in that eternal war machine. And you're his pillow. Not the kind you rest on, the kind you punch before battle. You march with the unit, though no one calls you a soldier. You're not paid, you're not armed, you're not trained. But oh, you're expected to carry things, expected to comfort, expected to be available. You're a walking luxury in a world of mud, blood and latrine pits. Lucky you, and don't imagine this is romantic. You're not some tragic campfire lover. There's no poetry here, just grunts, exhaustion, and the stench of leather, mixed with sweat and iron. He says you're soft. That's a compliment. He calls you his, like that's reassuring. He doesn't ask how you are. He checks if you're there. Because when the drums sound and swords get drawn, guess who he's thinking about? Not you. He's thinking about staying alive. And when he does survive, when the enemy falls and the tents go up, that's when you're remembered again. You're not a comrade. You're not a wife. You're not even listed among the camp slaves. You're the ghost who warms the bedroll and leaves before inspection. Now let's talk about sleep. You don't get much. The ground is hard, the nights are loud, and the man next to you thrashes in his dreams. You want to ask him about the war, but you already know the answer. You are the only part of it he thinks he can control. Your job. Stay warm, stay quiet, stay useful, and if you start crying again, do it facing the other direction. In some camps, you're not the only one. There are others like you, companions, camp ornaments, morale boosters. Sometimes you exchange glances in the cold. Sometimes you don't, because hope is dangerous. Familiarity is worse. You think you can bond with another concubiness. That would make it real. And none of this is supposed to be real. So you keep your eyes low, your voice low, your expectations lower. He gives you a token once, a bracelet, a piece of cloth, a carved bead. You think it means something. It doesn't. He just had a good day and didn't want to talk about it. He says things like, you're different, you aren't, you're just newer, less broken, or maybe more. Either way, it doesn't last. When you get sick, he leaves you with the supply wagons. When he drinks too much, he laughs about what you'd look like in armor. But you'll never get armor, not even metaphorically. If the camp is raided, you're not protected. If the rations run low, you're not fed first, or second, or third. If he dies, you're property again, passed along, or abandoned. And if you die, well, the army doesn't record that sort of thing. They'll bury you if there's time. They'll burn you if they're superstitious. Most likely, they'll leave you, because dragging a concubine's body slows the march. But hey, at least you got to sleep next to a hero. That's what matters, right? Now breathe. The campfire's dying. The wind carries dust through your teeth. Your soldier is snoring, arm draped across you like a possession. He's too tired to lift. And you're trying not to fall in love, because you already know you're not on his list of things to keep alive. You're not a name he'll shout if ambushed. You're not a face he'll remember when they award him his next bloody honor. You're just warmth, and warmth fades. So roll over, press your back to the earth, and let the cold remind you, this isn't love, this is logistics, this is Rome, and you're still here, for now. Oh no, don't tell me you thought you'd find peace in religion. You, a concubiness, walking into a Roman temple to find solace, to feel sacred. That's adorable. But no, put the incense down, step away from the altar, and try not to look so hopeful, because Rome has laws, and you are on the wrong side of them. Let's start with Juno, queen of the gods, patron of marriage, matron of moral order. She doesn't want you, never did. There's an ancient law, probably older than the sandals you cry into, that bars concubines from participating in Juno's rites. Male or female, it doesn't matter. If you're not a legitimate partner in the eyes of the Republic, then in the eyes of the divine, you're barely dust. You think you're going to stand under her sacred roof and pretend you belong. You can't even look at the statue without being judged. Your love, or whatever's left of it, is not holy. It's not even tolerable. It's tolerated, barely, and only in dark corners. You're not welcome in the temples. You don't get a seat at festivals. You don't get the flowers, the processions, the oil lamps flickering in sacred silence. You get the alley behind the shrine. You get whatever ritual someone forgot to clean up. You get the sighs when you show up and the silence when you leave. No candles for you. No prayers written in your name. No blessings. No rites of passage. No solemn hymns carried into the rafters on the scent of frankincense. You are not clean. You're not even neutral. You're a walking reminder of Rome's moral flexibility. A crack in the facade of public virtue. And no god, especially not one with temples funded by senators, wants to be associated with that. So when the Saturnalia rolls around and the streets light up with laughter and masks and wine, you stay inside. You don't join the games. You don't parade. You don't get olives in your hair or a coin in your cup. You sit by the window and listen. And even when you do sneak into a temple, late, quiet, eyes down, there's always someone who sees you. Some priest who wrinkles his nose. Some matron who clutches her scarf like you're contagious. Some whisper that scuttles from marble column to marble column until you feel like the incense is choking you. It's not just society that shuts the door, it's the divine. Because in Rome, religion isn't private, it's public, it's theatrical, it's structured, and your existence doesn't fit the script. You're not a wife, you're not a husband, you're not respectable, you're not protected. So even your hope for something sacred gets handed back to you like an unlit torch. Here, take your faith, take it outside, light it yourself if you dare, but be quick, because someone's always there to snuff it out with their judgment. Maybe it's a child watching their mother point at you. Maybe it's a merchant pretending not to notice. Maybe it's the person you love, avoiding eye contact because temples are for the real parts of life, not the shadowy ones, not you. So go home, concubinus. Go back to the room where you're kept, not welcomed. Back to the place where your name isn't carved into family stones or read aloud at dawn festivals. Go back to the corner where you whisper your own prayers, not because you believe they'll be answered, but because whispering is the only sacred thing left to you. Close your eyes, picture the temple you're not allowed in, and sleep if you can. Because here in Rome, even the gods think you're nothing. Well, look at you, 22, practically ancient. Once upon a time, not long ago, mind you, they cooed when you walked into a room. They whispered. They watched. You were shiny, soft, mysterious, dangerous, but in the harmless, decorative way. Now they squint, furrow their brows. Didn't you used to be? But they never finish the question, because the answer is obvious. You used to be wanted. Now you're around. And the worst part? You feel it. That little line beside your eye. That's not from laughter. That's from staying up too many nights wondering when they'd stop coming back. That faint crease in your forehead. That's what happens when you've spent 5 years smiling at people who didn't mean it. And no, there's no retirement plan for concubine. You don't age into status. You age into silence. Rome is not kind to yesterday's scandal. Let's be honest, the currency you dealt in was youth. Your softness, your voice, your smoothness, your ability to tilt your head at just the right angle and make a man forget his vows, his wife, his empire. Now you're a reminder that empires rot, that desire fades, that power moves on, and they hate reminders. Do you know what happens to a concubiness who gets too old? Too opinionated, too visible? He disappears. Best case, you're quietly dismissed. You live out your days sweeping marble floors in a villa somewhere in Sicily, muttering about the time Emperor Nero kissed your collarbone during Saturnalia. Worst case, a ditch, with your shoes missing, because they were worth more than you. And no, they don't write your name down. You weren't a wife. You weren't even a mistress. You are a pastime, a phase, and Rome doesn't keep souvenirs. You want to protest? You want to beg? You won't. You're too tired, too well trained. You'll pack your things, what little they let you keep, and you'll walk out of that home like you were never there. And the new one? Oh, they're already inside. 14, wide-eyed, believing the compliments, thinking they're special. You won't warn them, because no one warned you. And besides, they wouldn't listen. You wouldn't have. Remember how you used to smirk at the older ones, the faded ones, the ones with too much powder and too little charm. You thought it would never happen to you. And now, here we are. The mirror doesn't lie. The servants do. Your lover? He doesn't look at you the same. He doesn't look at you at all. You used to be the scandal. Now, you're an inconvenience. They used to defend you in court. Now, they forget to call you by name. And that wrinkle, the one that started all this? It's deeper now. You could try to hide. Stay out of the light. Speak less. Smile more. But you've done that for a decade. And look where it got you. You're tired. And no one likes a tired concubine. So what happens next? If you're clever and quiet, you might become a servant in the same household, alive in memory with laundry duties. If you're lucky, someone might toss you a coin, a favor, a fading title. But if you're honest, you know you're about to be replaced. Not because you did anything wrong, but because time did. And Rome doesn't recycle. So close your eyes. Let the weight of those years settle into your bones. Let the ache of all those forced smiles press into your chest, like the hand of history, because you were beautiful once, and that was your sin. And now you're not, and that's your punishment. Sleep well, concubines. Tomorrow, the younger ones shall wear your robe. So, it's over. You've lived your little life. You smiled when it hurt. You stayed soft when it killed you. You said yes when you meant please don't. And now they call you beautiful. Not to your face, of course. That would require remembering it. No, now it's the poets. They've come. Years too late. Decades later. Pen in hand. Tragedy in mind. Ready to turn your life into verses that rhyme. Ready to paint your misery in delicate strokes. They'll call you ethereal, otherworldly, brief, but not by name. No, your name won't be in the poem. That would make you too real, too human, and you were never allowed that. You were a silhouette, a whisper, a thing glimpsed in candlelight and forgotten by breakfast. Now you're a metaphor for longing, for beauty lost, for youth wasted. And the people who read these poems, they'll sigh, they'll nod solemnly. They'll say how tragic, as if you were an accident, not a person. They won't ask where you lived, what you liked, who you were when the door was closed, because you don't get remembered for your thoughts, just your effect on people, more important than you. You made an emperor weep? Lovely. You made a senator jealous? Fascinating. You existed without permission, poetic, and still nameless. If you're lucky, someone carves your story into stone, a statue maybe, some mythologized version of you, with perfect cheekbones and 0 wrinkles. They'll pose you in marble, hands folded delicately, eyes forever averted, because looking up would suggest agency. They'll place the statue in a garden, somewhere quiet, somewhere leafy, and people will walk past it, wine in hand, asking, wasn't he that favorite of so-and-so? As if you were a necklace, an accessory, a decorative pause in someone else's biography. Even worse, they might get it wrong. Misremember the name, get the date off, attribute your lover to someone else entirely, and no one will correct them, because the truth never mattered, only the mood. Your real story, it doesn't make good poetry. They don't want to write about how you were cold most nights, or how your feet bled from walking behind litters, or how your smile hurt because it was never returned. No, that's not pretty enough. So instead, they'll say you were tragic, that you died young and glowing, that you drowned in the Tiber, clutching a love letter, that you sighed your last breath under a laurel tree. They'll write that you were too pure for this world. Never mind how this world used you. And somewhere, in the margins of history, you'll live on, not as a person, not as a voice, but as a symbol of beauty, of sorrow, of the kind of suffering that doesn't ask to be solved, just admired from a safe distance. You were real, but they made you a ghost. So now, sleep. Sleep in the space they left for you. Not a tomb, not a cradle, a stanza. And if you listen closely, you might hear the next poet sharpening their quill, ready to write you down wrong again. Let's recap, shall we? You've been soft, silent, and smiling for what? A decade. You've aged out of usefulness, outlived your desirability, and now your only real skill is knowing when not to speak. Congratulations, you've officially mastered survival in a system designed to erase you, and yet, somehow you still think you might escape. How modern of you. You think there's a door you can slip out of, a sympathetic senator, a runaway plan, a fresh start. You think you'd run, but run where? You don't own land. You don't speak freely. You've spent most of your life being selected, not deciding. You've got no papers, no family, no money, just the fading memory of hands that used to hold you and eyes that no longer look your way. If you tried to flee, Rome would barely blink. You're not on any census worth mentioning. You don't get trials, you get warnings. If you vanish, the only thing people will notice is how quickly someone prettier filled your seat. And believe me, someone prettier always will, because Rome doesn't stop when you break, it repaints. You'd get 3 whispered sentences at a bathhouse. Oh, that one, gone. Really, he was lovely. Shame, who's next? You'd complain. If you had the energy, you'd say it wasn't fair, that you gave everything, that you were promised something. And Rome would laugh. Not loudly, not cruelly, just dismissively, as if your pain were a spilled goblet. Inconvenient, replaceable. That's what hurts the most, doesn't it? Not the betrayal, not the loneliness, not even the fear. It's the knowing, deep in your chest, that you could vanish completely, and life in the palace, the legion, the villa, would just keep going. And worse still, someone might remember you, just long enough to reshape you into a cautionary tale. He stayed too long. He got too bold. He forgot what he was. Not a lover, not a partner, not a man, just a placement, a role, a shadow, who thought he was solid. That's the truth, isn't it? You wouldn't survive as a concubinus. Not because Rome would kill you, but because you'd want to die first. You'd beg, silently of course, to be forgotten, to be erased, to have your name not mispronounced in someone else's poem, to have your face fade from the memory of people who only ever saw you from above. You'd long to be uncarved, unmarked, untouched. But Rome doesn't let you disappear cleanly. Even your absence will be politicized, romanticized, rewritten. You'll still be useful, just not to you. And here's the final cruelty. You weren't the worst treated, not even close. There were slaves who never got the villa, boys who never got the pearls, foreigners who were broken before they could be admired. You were the lucky one. You were the nightmare they envied. So don't bother imagining your escape. There is no after for you. There is only quiet, fading into quieter. And one day, someone will say your name wrong, on purpose, in front of a crowd of bored aristocrats who will laugh because it's safe to mock someone who can't answer back. So lie down. Let the silence take you. You asked what it was like to be a male concubine in Rome. Now you know. Now you sleep. Are you still awake? Honestly, what do you want from me? Another horror story? I could tell you what Elagabalus did next. I really could, but you won't like it. It involves a goat, a crown, and a very confused wedding guest list. So go ahead. Close your eyes before I start whispering about his gold-encrusted bedroom traps. You've had enough. You've time traveled 2,000 years backwards and somehow still managed to be the most overworked, underappreciated person in the Empire. You've been owned, mocked, erased, romanticized, and finally let go. You're lucky, you know. Not because you're still breathing, that's expected. You're lucky because you're modern, soft, anonymous. You can say no, you can walk away, you can scroll past suffering like it's a minor inconvenience and not a lifestyle. You're not perfect, but at least you're free. So take the win, rest, sleep now. You've suffered enough, at least in your imagination. And hey, if you enjoyed being emotionally ruined before bedtime, go ahead and like the video. Maybe subscribe, maybe not. I don't care. Algorithms don't frighten me. I've studied Rome. This is nothing, but I'll be here, grumbling, reading, waiting for the next poor soul who thinks they want to know what history really felt like. Until then, sleep, concubine. You're safe, and nobody's writing your name into a poem tonight.